Welcome, everyone, to our second edition of Wyrd Wednesday. I'm back from my travels and happy to see all of you. Of course, a special shout out to the members and moderators. With me, which is what makes it Wyrd Wednesday, is Aerik Arcadian. How are you doing, Aerik?
Hey, everybody. I am doing well. How are you, Christiana?
I am very well and so happy to see you here, and so happy to see everyone joining us in all the places where we are, primarily YouTube, but also Instagram, Facebook, Twitch. Feel free to say hi, and if you have questions about what we're saying or doing, let us know. So for those of you who know, this is a new content that we're adding. As you know, I've been a tarot reader for a very long time, and Aerik is a rune reader, and I have asked Aerik to teach me runes right here in front of y'all, so y'all can learn right along with me. And this is our second time doing this. We're going to do it once a month until we get tired of it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true? Yeah.
Until we run out of things to say.
Right. So before we get started, we have to do the disclaimer. Last time, I think you said we had to talk about the dark side of runes.
Yep.
Let us just say, and add what you want to this, that unfortunately, within heathenry and within those who work with runes, there are those who identify themselves as folkish, which I'm just going to say it, in my mind, is another word for racist. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we know that historically different runes have been used to symbolize these kinds of organizations. This is our disclaimer where we say that that's not us. We welcome everyone. We believe that the wisdom of the runes is for anyone who might be called to it. And we disavow any of that crazy stuff. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, misappropriation is the word that comes to mind. Misappropriation. So there is no racism or any of that type of energy inherent to the runes. And just because other people use it for bad stuff, that's not the fault of the runes. And we don't agree with it.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right. So haven't seen you in like a month. What have you been up to?
Well, I feel like so much has happened since the last time we spoke. In fact, so many things happened, I can't even remember what we talked about last time. So for starters, Celine and I went to Summer Magic Fest in Orlando, which was loads of fun, awesome rituals, amazing workshops, some really cool headliners. We had a couple summer solstice rituals that we attended just very recently. I have put out at least one episode of my podcast, and I started my class series, right? The Witch's Toolkit. So we got underway with the first class in the series, which was on sound and music in a ritual and magical environment. So that was a lot of fun. What have you been up to?
Fabulous. Well, before I answer that, can we just do a shameless self-promotion for your next class, because people can get in on the second class. Is that true?
Well, yeah, and all the classes are recorded. So if you sign up now, you're still going to get the recording from the first class, which we just did a few days ago. So the next class is on fluid condensers. So we're going to be talking about herbal preparations, tinctures, a little bit of alchemy and stuff like that. And then the final class is on runic divination, intuitive runic divination.
Fabulous. And there is a link in the description to go to your website to sign up for that class. I was signed up for the first one, but could not attend. And I think everyone in the YouTube community was aware I was not around this weekend. And I think most of you are aware I was at a secret event, but I can tell you a snippet of it that involved runes. So I was asked to sort of be the spiritual designer for a weekend that would involve a lot of ritual, around a particular theme. And for that theme, I made a bind rune. I took three runes that I felt made sense for this. I put it together, and I drew it out and sent it to everyone on the guest list and said, look, this is the symbol for this event. Anytime it's reproduced, it's going to add magic. It's going to add power. But I didn't know, like, if the group was going to really get it or not. You know, I didn't know if that what they'd do with it. Well, they did so much with it. They made beautiful rune carvings. They made paintings. They did body painting with it. Like I walked into the property and this bind rune was like everywhere. And so it was just a beautiful thing and a beautiful way for the community to really express its desires in that moment. So that felt really good. So thanks for the encouragement on that.
That's really such a beautiful story. And I was so happy when you shared some of that with me.
Now, I'm curious to know, like, how often do you use bind runes?
In one form or another. I would say I probably throw a rune on 75% of things that I do magically. Like, I feel like just about any spell work, anything you're going to do in ritual can be enhanced with runes, even if it is not solely rune focused. But in terms of bind runes, I use them quite often. They're just so simple to throw together and so powerful and easy to put a lot of intention behind. So do you want to explain what a bind rune is for people who might not know?
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And why don't you do that?
Okay. So a bind rune is a grouping of multiple runes that you have superimposed on top of one another in a harmonious or aesthetic way that pleases you. It's basically like a form of sigil making, but instead of regular alphabet, you're throwing runes in there.
Well, and that brings something up because the group that I was working with this weekend kept calling it a sigil. And I was like, okay, is that okay? Like, does that work?
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty much like synonymous, I think. If you were going to say runic sigil, or sigil would just be the general term that encompasses all of those types of things. And then the bind rune is one made specifically with runes. But, you know, other people who are a bit more conservative might be offended by that definition. I'm pretty lax in my definitions with things, so I'll just put that out there as well.
Fair. Completely fair. And you know, the thing is, although I am just now with your tutelage learning to read the runes, I've been making bind runes for years. And at the beginning of COVID, when, you know, we didn't really know how bad it was going to be, how is it spread, what's going on. And because I talked to so many people, like really early on, I was confronted with a very surprising COVID death. And I was like, oh, well, if that can happen, okay. And we've got our older, my mother-in-law, all of that. So we locked down hard for that, you know, first few months. And I made a bind rune for our protection, which my husband still carries to this day, I will say. Yes. Yes. Obviously, you know, I was just protecting our family, which, you know, there it is. But yeah, I do it a lot for friends and in, you know, in my personal life. So is it time to get to the homework?
Okay, yes. What was our homework?
Okay, so friends, this is what we chose to do. We came up with a goal. We came up with a goal for which we wanted to make a magical, well, a runic sigil, right? A bind rune. We came up with a goal on which we both agreed, and we decided that we would each make a bind rune and then present it to each other, discuss why we did what we did, recognizing, of course, that Aerik is the master and I am the very novice here. So it's not a competition, but I'm interested to see how well I did and how this is going to look. So I've got it here on my phone so I don't screw it up. We were thinking about what's going on in the world everywhere. And we wanted to do something, since we were both doing it, figuring that it would contribute. If we were both doing it, it would be twice as powerful. So let's do something powerful. We want to affect the planet. So here's what we want to do. The bind rune that we are to create should encourage thoughtful discussions between leaders that foster positive change. I'll say it again. We want to encourage thoughtful discussions between leaders that foster positive change. That was our goal. I have made my bind, and we agreed it would be 3 runes. You can make a bind rune with 2 runes, 4 runes, whatever. We agreed it would be 3 runes. So who goes first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
So are we just going to show, or are we going to show and tell?
Show and tell. I want the whole process.
Okay. So I made mine in color.
It's gorgeous.
So
it's absolutely gorgeous. Okay.
All right. And just to show this also, here is my scratch sheet of, you can see the evolution of designs or different runes that I felt like maybe that should go in there. And I think one thing I'll say, the thing about bind runes is that you have to play around with it for a while. You have to draw it and redraw it. And then sometimes you go in one direction and it just feels like you went in the wrong direction. And you maybe have to start over. You keep manipulating, changing the orientation and the size of runes. So anyway, this is what eventually felt right to me for this particular intention. And there are 3 main runes in here. I mean, if you look at any bind rune, you might easily see like 7 or 12 runes in there, right? Because when you start laying them on top of one another, you make other runes. But so my main focus here, am I pointing correctly? Okay, so we've got Anzus at the bottom. I just shortened the line a little bit. But Anzus is the mouth. It is like spoken word communication. So I have the communication aspect there.
Is this Anzus?
Yes.
There it is.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I shortened the bottom line of Anzus because it didn't feel right. First I had a really tall one and then that didn't feel right. So I shortened it. And you can take those liberties when you make bind runes.
I did not know that. I just learned something here. I just learned something.
Yeah, just like a sigil, you can draw it and redraw it. And the important thing is that it has the meaning and the aesthetically pleasing qualities to you. You're the designer. So if you feel good about it, then it's going to have more energy behind it. So then central to this bind rune is Tewaz, the arrow. And that is my action, change, but also victory, right? I want it to be successful. And at the top, there is Dagas, because ultimately I feel like this energy should be as if it is bringing in a new day, a new dawn.
Mm-hmm.
So all of those together, I drew and redrew. Now I really was torn between whether or not I should replace one of those with Othala, because Othala is inheritance and property, but it can also refer to, yes.
Is that? Okay.
Yep. It can also refer to ideas that you have inherited either from people before you or from collective consciousness or from society. And those are some of the things that need to change. But ultimately, we had the 3 rune limit, and I decided that Anzus, Tewaz, and Dagas were the most important ones that would be central to how I wanted to play with this energy.
So I absolutely love this. And before I show mine, I just want to say thank you to everyone coming on in. It's so good to see you. Of course, a big shout out to all the members on YouTube, over on Twitch, suspicious username. This is really cool. Thanks for streaming and sharing. Thank you for being here. Joanne Matthews, so great to see you on Facebook. And Rebecca says, so happy to see a second session on runes. Well, we hope there will be many more. So great to see all of you. For those of you just joining, the challenge was Aerik and I decided on a goal, and that we would each make a bind rune and present it to each other and see how similar or different it was. The goal for the planet, to encourage thoughtful discussions between leaders that foster positive change. Now, I am feeling like a really good student here because the bind rune, now, okay, to the good, I used 2 of the same runes you did, right?
I was wondering if we were going to use the same one.
We used 2, so 2 out of 3. But here's the thing, Aerik, hold yours up and show everyone your beautiful artwork. I'm a little, yeah, there you go, there you go. Okay, beautiful, right? Okay, please now see mine. I can barely draw a stick figure, but I can do a bind rune. So as you can see, I started here with Dagas. And it was kind of funny because I was flipping through some books, and it was like as if I was doing bibliomancy because I was looking for something else. In fact, I was looking for Anzus. That's where I wanted to start because I remembered the mouth, thoughtful discussion, so I was going there. But then the book just flipped open, and the book I was looking at said something about harmony of opposing ideas to create a more enlightened conversation. And then I thought about day, and it's a new day, and it needs to be a new day. So I was, okay, fine. So then I thought about manas. Am I saying it correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought about manas because, like, you know, and correct me if this is wrong, but, you know, I think that we can think about this as like all of us, like all the people, the whole community, and for what is the benefit of the whole community. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you can. That would be one interpretation, and other interpretations that might reflect the self, but in your interpretation, it could like collectively the self.
Right. And the idea of taking these opposing forces and turning them into something unified. So then I went to draw this after having drawn this, and I was freaking out because I couldn't figure out how to do it. I felt like I was an Alzheimer's patient trying to draw the clock. I just couldn't do it. And then I realized that manas is Dagas with legs. And so I put legs on it, and I was like, oh, no, that's not right. We don't start with this. We start with this. So I drew this, and then I just drew over it to bring Dagas in. And then, of course, Tiwaz. And what I was thinking with, there's an association that I've learned with justice, that this can be done in a just way. So there we are.
Yeah, I love it. And all the other runes that like could have been included but were not, and it's so interesting to see like in which direction you chose your 3 and I chose my 3. And I was looking at Gebo, at Wunyo. I was looking at like togetherness, harmony, joy, like what's the most important, what's the most central thing. But it's not even necessarily about what's most important. It's like what sticks out to you, because that's where your energy needs to flow when you're designing this thing for your intention. So it's really interesting to see the different directions that we went with it. And we had no conversation about it other than assigning the task. And we ended up using 2/3 of the same stuff,
which is pretty cool, actually. Like I'm feeling good about that. Suspicious username says, I like both. They're wonderful. Yours reminds me of a kite flying free toward the sky and the sun. I love it. Can we just for my own edification, switch gears toward divination just for a minute? Yeah. Like, am I going off in a whole different direction than I should?
No, I totally see where you're coming from. Remember, like those might seem like such different concepts, the self versus the collective self, but we only have 24 symbols to represent every possible word in the English vocabulary that we want to communicate. So yeah, it can be both of those things and more.
Do you want to say some more about the more?
Well, I mean, I frequently will interpret it as the self or as the ego, or as how you identify within the collective.
In which case, I really like that for my bind rune, because of the sense of like, these people have got to put it back in their pants and let their egos go for the collective good. Like, could this speak to that, that need?
Yeah, I think definitely it could. And then also it brings up, like, when we are trying to inspire positive change in the world, a lot of that positive change in the world is where each individual fits into their own place within the collective as well. So there's so many different angles that you could approach that from and have it be just an awesome magical intention.
That is fabulous. And then I'm assuming if we talk about it from a divinatory perspective, like I often joke that, in any random token divination system we have, a particular symbol could mean like, it could be your grandmother, a head of lettuce, or you might step on a nail. And what's the common thread between all of them? And I think that's really the trick, whether we're looking for magical intention or divinatory meaning, how it can be all of those things. And then how are you going to read it in that particular reading based on context? So it's interesting. And I think because I'm a tarot person, and a tarot image typically is so deep with so much going on, and these are like so simple, there's a part of me that kind of wants to make the meaning simple too. And especially because the meaning is like a word, mouth, cattle, day. And it's really not that simple at all. It is every bit as deep as tarot or anything else, isn't it?
Yeah. And so, yes, the literal translation of the rune is one word. And then from there, we do like the word web associate. Like if I say day, what's the next word that comes to your mind?
Opportunity.
Okay. And if I say opportunity, what's the next word that comes to your mind?
Action.
Okay. So now Dagas is day, opportunity, and action. And you can play that word web game infinitely until you have exhausted every concept, emotion, and intention in human existence, and you will find overlap amongst many of the runes because you have action. You went from day to opportunity to action, but then also Tewaz would be like victory, action. So like we have similarities and overlaps with a lot of these things, just like we will have overlapping concepts in tarot as well.
Sure. So you had, when we were talking in preparation for our conversation here, you had said something to me about another way to work with the runes magically that I had never heard of.
Yeah, I was talking about rune words. So that is a very similar concept, except instead of putting them on top of each other and kind of making them like a sigil and redesigning it, you write it out from left to right with your first rune, then you go to the next one, and then your next one. Maybe you have 3, maybe you have 4, 5, 6, 7, however many runes you want to use. But it's writing the runes out. And I think the interesting thing about rune words is that, as opposed to a bind rune where everything is kind of mashed on top of each other, you can really map out like, okay, here's where the energy is starting. Like these are the changes that I want it to go through until I get to the end. And this is where I want it to be when I have completed it. So I kind of was drawing a little rune word there as I was making the bind rune down at the bottom. Just to kind of get, because I was testing. I was like, are these really the runes that I want? And so I start with Zeus. That's my first word because it's starting with communication in this process. I go to Tewaz because that's the change, that's the victory. And then we end at Dagaz, which for me was like the dawn of a new day. So that was the order of the energy that I wanted to express. And then that felt right. So I turned that into a bind rune. But you don't have to turn it into a bind rune. You can put that on anything. You can write it down carve it into a candle. You can put it out on paper, put it on a stone, like whatever you're going to do with just one single rune in your magic or spell work, you can do a rune word or a bind rune. So it's just another way of looking at it.
So I really love that. And I love thinking about like, what is the order? What is the order to make something happen? It almost feels like the visualization of that becomes more powerful because you have to think about it that way.
Yeah, I agree. You can see the flow of how everything needs to change and needs to happen. But here's another thing I wanted to ask you about. As you have been making bind runes for a long time, or just working with runes in magic for a long time, when you put a rune on something, or you make a bind rune, or you carve it, or whatever you're going to do with the runes, do you do anything special to it?
Not as much as I think I probably could or should. If I've put it on a stone, I've anointed the stone with oil. I'll say prayers over it or whatever. But very cross-cultural because I don't really know, like, I know that some of these runes are associated with Norse deities, and I honor that, but I'm not specifically invoking them because I don't know them well enough to invoke them. When I do candle magic and put the runes on candles, of course, I'm doing all the other things that you would do along with it. But I don't have a specific liturgy or process, and I would love to. So please share.
Well, it's not necessarily like a liturgy, but I think what's important, at least for me, like what's important for the runes is that I see them, I guess the best way to put it would be as living symbols. So they're like living representations of energy, and it doesn't feel like they are quite done after I draw them. So I try to give them life. And, you know, the thing we most have access to that is life-giving, according to mythology and lots of different belief systems, is your breath. So you breathe into them, and as you're breathing into them, you can whisper the rune name, or you can intone the rune name, and you kind of feel like you're waking them up and giving them life, for lack of a better term. And I like to do that with anytime I put a rune on something.
Wow. I love that. And that will now be my practice. Thank you for that. That is fabulous. And very typical, very similar to like tarot magic, where I say, like, if you're putting your cards on the altar for a purpose, say what the purpose is. Or if you want the energy of a card inside you, breathe it in. But the idea of breathing life into it, that is beautiful. And I will absolutely do that. Oh my gosh, that is so good. So when we talk about sort of the magical process of runes beyond divination, one thing I hear people say very regularly is that, while it's great to buy runes or rune cards or whatever, making your own runes is really powerful.
Yeah.
Can we speak about that?
Oh, I would love to. Yeah, I would love to. And I think it's the same concept of pretty much anything that you do with your magic, right? Like the more work you put into something, the better your results that you're going to get out of them. It's just like if you are making your magical tools and you have are you going to go and harvest the branch from the tree and make your wand? Or are you going to like go to Home Depot and get a little wooden dowel and that will be your wand? And I'm not saying that to like shame anyone who has to go that route, because certainly not everyone can physically go grab the branch from the tree or cut it down, and it's fine. But if you are capable of putting the work in, then you should put the work in. And the more work and more intention as you make something, you form a bond with it, you put your energy into it, and it's going to serve you more. And when we're talking about the world of divination, however you perceive that the messages are coming through, maybe you're connecting to ancestral spirits, maybe you're connecting to your higher power, you want the best possible bond with that thing so that the messages are clear.
Absolutely. So when we think about like making runes, like I've got this rune set that I really like. It's aventurine, it's carved into stone, and I love it, but I can only use it for so long because my fingers start to know like they're different shapes. I really need a rune set where it's uniform. And so I think about a branch and cutting a branch, like a really straight branch, cutting a branch into discs. And then like when I was a kid, I had a wood burning set, like burning in and then maybe painting in the indentation. Like that would be so cool. But I know for a fact I'm not going to do that. I just know it. I don't have the tools. I know for a fact. I just wanted to let you know over on Instagram, Hector, good to see you. He really liked the bit about breathing life into the runes, and said that yesterday he was anointing his mojo bag and he exhaled into it. So he did the same thing. So yeah.
Perfect. Wonderful.
There you go. So I'm thinking about in terms of time, energy, money, and skill. I have little of all of those things when it comes to making these sorts of things. So I was really thinking about Fimo, doing, but then I'm like, would it be better to use clay that came from the earth versus like freaking Sculpey or resin or, whatever that is, I mean, what do you think about all that?
Okay, so like if we don't know a lot about historically, like real attested history of people using the runes. We have like some various accounts of like casting lots or throwing things, wood or bone that had symbols carved onto them, and a lot of assumptions are made that, oh, that must have been using the runes for that. Okay, so I think the best assumption is that they were carved into natural materials in the ancient world. And I think if we
That would be a
carry
good
that,
assumption.
if we carry that forward, then, and we want to be as close to that as we could, then we would use natural materials. And then, so that's the traditional perspective. And then if you're looking at it also from a flow of energy, you do have to ask yourself, do you connect to the non-natural material as much as you would connect to the natural one? Does it carry enough energy for you? And if it does, then great. But if you question it, then that's probably a sign that you shouldn't.
Ouch. Ouch. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
No. That's actually a really good point. Yeah.
But let me show you this. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show you, first of all, I'll show you two. This is like a tiny mini runes. I don't even know if you're going to be able to see. They're so tiny.
Oh
this
my gosh.
Wunyo.
I see Wunyo.
On a bone antler carving set. Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this was an antler.
That was shaved slices of antler, and I did burn those in. And in terms of pyrography, that's on the more difficult side to get it into bone. But kind of where I started was with these little birch.
See,
slices,
that's what I want to make right there. That's beautiful.
So all you have to do, and I'm going to tell you, there's various levels of commitment depending on how nice you want it to come out. Excuse me.
Go ahead.
So you don't have to cut the branch into slices yourself. You can go to the craft store and they usually have some sort of bag of small birch slices.
Really?
For you. Yeah. So
like
you can do that.
I could go to Michael's and buy that?
You can go to Michael's usually and get a bag of like 30 to 50 birch slices, and they're cheap. Depends on the season.
Okay. What season? What season is birch slice season?
Well, I notice that they usually carry more birch themed items around the winter time because they're pretty for the fireplace decorations. And a lot of people also will take them and turn them into Christmas ornaments. So they have various sizes. They have big ones too. But if you can't find them at Michael's, you can also find them on the dreaded Amazon, and you can just order them online also. But once you have that, right, it depends on how much energy you want to invest in your runes. You can take a paint pen and just draw the runes on there, and then boom, you're done. If you want to go a little further, you can use a pyrography tool and actually burn them into the wood, which I think for me, that's my preference. And then if you want to like go a little bit further, you can use some sandpaper and make them nice and smooth, or you can put a finish or some type of oil on them as well.
So you really just made my day, because for years I can't be trusted with sharp objects. Like there's no way I should ever use a saw. I like all 10 of my fingers. I don't think I would retain them if I had a saw. That is just who I am, and I'm aware. So I have wanted to make runes out of wood for the longest, but lack this ability. I can go into the woods and get a stick, no problem there. but I do not have this ability. And knowing that I can buy them pre-milled, my level of commitment is perfectly okay with that. So do you have a particular, how do we want to say it, like a blessing ritual or something once you've created the runes, or as you're creating each one, is there a conscious or even subconscious blessing ritual that's happening?
Well, I won't say that there is necessarily a particular consecration or blessing. However, I think you should use, like, if you are already inclined to do something a certain way, you should do that one. I don't think there's like one traditional runic blessing. And even if you just read it in a book somewhere that it says like traditional blessing for the creation of runes, it's made up. It's made up. So just, however, what I would do as I'm creating each one, as I am carving or burning or whatever is leaving the final mark of the rune, I like to see like a focus of my energy flowing into that, as if there is an etheric hand or etheric beam of light that's coming right beside the line that I'm making with the pyrography tool or whatever. And that's, so it's setting up this astral light on whatever I'm carving, right? For lack of a better term. And then once I have it carved, I'm going to breathe into it. I'm going to do that, I don't know, 3, 5, or 7 times. But also I'm going to be intoning the rune name. And it's almost like, and I do this every time I make a rune set. So it's almost like I'm telling it who it is. And I'm intoning the name of the rune into, and I hold it like really close to my face as I'm saying the name of the rune. And the intonation, which is really important to me, that was something that I actually, to do another shameless self-promotion, that was something that I talked a lot about in my class about sound. It was the magical voice and intoning, and finding that vibrational frequency where you are speaking magically as opposed to, just some lighthearted conversation. But then we get down and we have like some real stuff to do. And so you're using that frequency where your body is vibrating and you are resonating. You become the tuning fork for the universe, and you're putting all that energy into the rune. And then you do that with each rune as you make it. You wake them all up that way, and then you can take them collectively and charge them or bless them however you see is a best fit to do that. I like to hold them and kind of just concentrate on all the energy flowing into them. I might do a little smoke cleansing, or also some sort of, one of my favorite ways of charging is like with sound. So I'll ring a singing bowl or play some music or just whatever feels like, and it doesn't have to be like pagan music or witchy music. It can just be whatever I'm feeling at the moment to get the energy flowing, because that's just a conduit to get the energy rolling.
Perfect. Peggy Lou says you can use a Sharpie to draw or trace them on the wooden discs. And, in all honesty, that, like, the level to which I think I can rise will be buying the discs, using like a Sharpie or a paint pen, and then some sort of oil or finish. What kind of oil or finish would you recommend in that situation?
Well, on one set, I used tung oil, and that came out pretty nice. It kind of gave it more of a darker glow to it. And then if you really want to like okay, so we're going to diverge 2 different schools of thought here. Okay. Because if you really want them to last forever, you can put a polyurethane finish on them. However, here's the caveat, and it doesn't bother me, but it may bother someone else. Polyurethane is super chemically. It is not natural. And if we're doing wood because you're inclined to use a natural thing, and then you are covering the natural thing in an unnatural finish, then it doesn't really make any sense, right? But
yep, that's right. Like,
those are the options.
That's where I was going. Absolutely. So we still have a few minutes. Everyone who's here, if you have questions or comments, now's a great time to get them in. My question at this point, when we talk about the runes for magic versus the runes for divination, like, for example, when I'm looking at tarot from a spiritual perspective, what are the spiritual lessons of this card? It may be very different. It may have a very different energy than what that card might mean in a reading. When we think about the runes and think about their divinatory meaning versus what you might use them for magically, what I'm thinking is I'm not seeing a real disconnect there. Like I feel like the understanding we have of each rune is going to be pretty similar whether we're using it in a prophetic nature or a magical one. Do you agree?
Yeah, and that's actually a really interesting thing that I came across pretty early when I was trying to learn runes, is that I had some books and they would list, here's the divinatory meaning and here's the magical purpose. And they were very different. They were very different. And I remember looking at them and thinking, like, where does this come from? And like, why would they be so different? And I think that that conflict is what ultimately kind of started my journey back. Like, where does all this information come from? And then you find out that it's in the book that way because somebody made it up. You know, they made it that way. And it's like, okay, so if we go back to like the most original definitions for what we know about the runes, and we just play that word web game, then we can arrive at our own places where, you know, on the divinatory side and the magical side, they're very similar.
Got it. Rebecca says, 2 decades ago, I got a piece of wood from my childhood tree fort with the intention of making my own special set of runes. Sadly, it has been lost and I never got to finish the project. No. I would like to try and find something equally special now. Yes. And the tree fort was just a grove of trees, not something built. No, I get it. I used to have one of those. You could like go inside. Yep. So I do have I've got I made these runes, my 3x5 index card runes, which have actually been really helpful. I would have to say to anyone, if you don't have a rune set and you're not ready to make one, this was a Sharpie and index cards, and it's been just super helpful, not only in being able to communicate with Aerik here, but in general. But I have a question, and now I'm going more toward divination here. So many of us in tarot say that there are technically no negative cards, while we would all rather see the 10 of Cups than the 10 of Swords. We can find a positive and or a negative message in each card. Now, in Lenormand, there are negative cards, positive cards, neutral cards. What do you think?
Yeah, okay. So I am right there with you on the, I can find the positive spin to whatever. But I have to say, like, when Hagalaz or Isa come out in the reading, it's usually something not good.
It's usually something not good.
Okay? Hagalaz is hail. It is destruction. And you can put the positive spin on that as, destruction is creation, or you have to destroy before you build something new. It's like the tower. Hagalaz is like the tower, right? So you can put a spin on it, but every time I see that pop out in the reading, I'm like, right. It's like having the tower come out in the reading. And Isa is, it's ice, frozen. It usually means chill out. And I guess on the positive spin, you can look at it and say it is peace. It is stillness. But that's more of a stretch of the meaning. So those are ones that, for me anyway, when they come out, they give me the heebie-jeebies. I know maybe something's up, and then I get that trigger in my head that's like, how am I going to make the positive spin on what I need to say?
Now, could this ever come up to say, don't do that thing? Like just stop, don't do it?
Yeah, no, 100%. It could mean just stay where you are.
Ness, Mediha Ness, 10 minutes behind in watching. If the ancient people had glitter, they would have used it for anything special. Permission to put glitter on my runes has been granted. Thank you.
Permission granted. Absolutely. You didn't need permission for that.
So there's one more rune that I have sort of identified in a negative way, and I would love for you to address that.
Really?
Yeah, should I not have?
Well, I guess I can see where you're coming from a negative perspective, as if like it's representing a need or an emergency or a bad situation, which means that something bad has had to have happened in order to put you in that place where you have an emergency. I like to use it not as necessarily a representation of I need something because something bad happened, but just what do I need? What is best for me? What serves me the most at this moment? And, just on a very simple level, if we're looking at the most basic of human function here, like I'm hungry, not because I'm starving, but because it's dinner time and I need to eat. Right? That's not a bad situation to be in.
Right.
There's food in the fridge. I have the food. I'm good. I just need to eat it. So for me, I don't get that heebie-jeebie feeling from Nauthies, but I can see why you would. And I feel like maybe early on I did, because like the translation of emergency, it's like, oh, something bad must be happening, but it's necessity. It's your needs, your basic needs too. What do you need right now?
Okay. I like that. And again, the floor is open for questions. We've talked about bind runes. We've talked about making runes. We've talked about rune words, which were different than what I thought they would be.
What did you think they were going to be?
What I thought they were going to be was like literally like be like the actual letters and trying to spell words with the actual letters, which is limited, So I like what they are better. Peggy Lou has a question. What books do you recommend?
Well, I will tell you, I really like this book. It's a short book. It's a very brief guide to the runes. It's called A Practical Guide to the Runes, and it's by Lisa Peschel. I think that's how you say her name. I have that book. Yeah,
I have that book. Yep.
It's a quick read. It's a light book. It's got a lot of good information. It's just like, it suffers from a few of the same things that you will find from jumping from one book to another book. Some of the names of the runes in there are not the most common agreed upon names. She spells them differently, and a couple of the runes have like a completely different name than what we normally use, which is fine. It's fine as long as you still get the point across as to where you're trying to have the energy go to.
Got it. Peggy Lou would like you to spell Lisa's last name.
P as in Peter, E as in Echo, S as in Sierra, C as in Charlie, H as in Hotel, E as in Echo, L as in Lima.
Thank you. And I find myself getting a little ticked off with sort of the changes in, how a rune might be said, or, is it, the spellings are different, or like, is it, well, it doesn't matter. Oh, like Ingwaz versus Inguz, but it's still the same rune.
Well, okay, but for sake of argument, remember that Elder Futhark is a reconstructed alphabet, and the way we reconstruct it is from pulling from all of these other alphabets. And some of the information was a little corrupted or a little lost to time. So some of the same runes exist in multiple alphabets, and they do have different names depending on if you're looking at it from the Elder Futhark variation, the Younger Futhark variation, the Anglo-Saxon variation, or even more of the different runic alphabets that spread. So they have valid different names, and it's like, what did the majority of us want to call it kind of at some point?
And I mean, the thing, it exists in tarot as well. The suit of pentacles can be the suit of discs, the suit of coins. So, it is not unusual. So I guess my final question to you for our time together until next month, in terms of runic divination, for a person who is just starting out, we've focused a lot on magic. And as I said at the beginning, I'm a lot more comfortable with runic magic at this stage of the game than I am with runic divination. For a person just starting out, like, for example, in tarot, for a person just starting out with tarot, we may say, do a card of the day. Not as a divination, just what card should I focus on? What card should I look for in the day? Let me learn this card today, right? Card of the day. What is a good practice for a person just beginning to learn runes?
So get a book that you will accept the meanings from, first of all, because there's so many different definitions. You don't want to jump back and forth and confuse yourself. Get a book to where you're going to accept the definitions and do a daily rune pull. And so you're going to dowse for a rune. You're going to pull one rune out in the morning and say, what does the universe want me to know right now? And then you look up the rune in that book and you look at the meanings and you figure out how that applies to your morning. And you just do that every morning until you get comfortable with the runes. And that way you take it one day, one rune, one pull at a time. And it's not super overwhelming, and it only takes about 5 to 10 minutes.
All right. I will do that starting tomorrow. And when we meet again next time, we'll talk about it.
Okay. That sounds fun. I have one more thing, Christiana.
Sure.
I want to leave everyone with a question that maybe we can talk about next time. And that question is, what is it about divination that allows you to go from tarot to runes? What is the commonality about reading and performing divination that allows you to use one tool and then use another tool? Am I getting my point across?
You are, and it's beautiful, and I wish we could have that conversation right now, but we can't. So let's all think about it, and we'll meet back here in a month and have that conversation. That is fabulous.
Beautiful.
Aerik, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Friends, there is a link to Aerik's website in the description where you can learn more about him, book a reading, join his classes that he has. He's right in the middle of his class series. You can get the recording for the last one and join the next one live. When is the next one?
The next one is July 18th. I think it's this Saturday. If it's not the 18th, it's whatever Saturday is really close to the 18th. I'm bad with calendars.
I understand. And friends, I am back from my trip, so I will be on live for our normal things. I'll see you on Friday. I'll see you on Saturday. We'll do the newsletter recap on Sunday. And I appreciate all of you so very much. Special shout out to the members and the moderators. Thank you, everyone, for your kind attention. Aerik, thank you. Have a great night, everyone. Be good.
Bye.
Bye-bye.